Hello and welcome to Concert Pipeline. I'm Steve Jones. Today on the program we have a really freaking fun interview, one that I had a blast with and probably took up too much of the gentleman's time. I'm talking about Franky Perez. I had the chance to talk to Frankie about his Crossing the Great Divide album, which came out June 24th, and we had a really great talk. He played some songs for the pod, and he has so many great stories that that we'll just let that lie where it is, and you'll get to hear that in just a moment. I won't take too much time up front because I really want to get into that. But just a shadow of what's going on in my world right now at this moment as this episode is being recorded. I'm going down a nostalgia train of sorts, digging into the past a bit, and it's fun. It's fun shaving off, those layers and kind of going back to your youth and what music you loved when you were younger, and some of it that has stuck around over the course of time. I'll explain a little bit about what I mean by that. A couple weeks back, we had Zach Goody on the program, the new lead singer of Smash Mouth. You can go check that out on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, and Stitcher for that interview. We had a really great chat, hit it off, and and I realized, okay, Zach's going to be playing with Smash Mouth at the Turlock County Fair, actually, which is a couple hours away. It's almost 2 hours away. Let's say it's a drive. But this morning I was like, you know what? I'm going to go for it. And I emailed Zach and was like, hey, you're going to be around. You have time to hang for a little bit at the show in Turlock. I might be able to make it out. I don't have any kids. And he got back to me right away and was like, hey, I'll be around. I'm not sure what the schedule looks like, but he hooked me up with a ticket. So I'm about to head out to Turlock, and we'll get on the road, listen to some music, for some bands that I have coming up, which brings me to the next step of the nostalgia train, and that is Everclear. Going to be interviewing Everclear. Our lexicus from Everclear is going to be on the program, and that is another piece of my late 90s, early 2000 nostalgia train. I mean, I was a fan of Everclear. I saw them live a couple of times. Our lexicus pulled me up on stage to dance and rock out. We had both of the shows that I saw, back when I was younger. So they hold a kind of a special place in my heart, and it'll be great to get to talk to Art here in a couple of days, and so that'll be fun too. That's just a couple of days away, and then let's wind out the nostalgia week with Motion City Soundtrack. Probably arguably the coolest album that I was a big fan of, and that is Commit This to Memory. They're on their 17th anniversary Commit This to Memory tour, and I haven't fully committed to going to their show, but they have two shows in the Bay, one in Oakland tomorrow night as of the date of this recording, and one in Sacramento on Tuesday night. So I'm planning on going to one of those, I think, and because Commit This to Memory was such a pivotal album in my youth. I listened to that album hundreds of times. I don't know, definitely probably 100. I can quote that album almost verbatim. It's one of those albums you put on and you sing from start to finish, and it's a big part of like I said, my youth and my love for that band. And to hear them playing the album in its entirety for the second time, I actually got to see them on their 10th anniversary tour. So I guess that would be 7 years ago now, with my buddy Joe at the Fillmore, and they played that album beginning to end, and I was rocking out the whole time. So I plan to see them again as well. So nostalgia overload here for me, and let's go back to Smash Mouth and where I'm about to head off to. It's just going to be cool to see what Smash Mouth does, and how they sound with a new lead singer. I talked to Zach about it at length. They have a new song out also called 4th of July, so you can check that out. But I'm going to check out that show, and we're going to bring some of the concert, I'm sure, to Concert Pipeline here in the coming weeks. So that is the overload of Concert Pipeline, news for me. And again, Franky Perez, new album, Crossing the Great Divide, that just came out. It is great. he has so many great stories that I can't wait for him to share with the program. And let's get into Frankie Perez. Yep. All right, well, Frankie, tell me how you're doing. How's your week going for you?
It's going good so far. I'm excited about the album coming out tomorrow, and just been kind of building up to that. So things have been really good. I can't complain. How about you? How are you?
Things. There's nothing to complain about. I mean, like I'll tell you, I'll just get it out of the way. I had COVID last week, but it was like nothing. It was just drained the battery a little bit.
Right.
So I made it 2.5 years without hitting that milestone or accomplishment, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, yeah.
and now I can check that off for at least for a while. So
yeah, at least for a little. Same with me. We avoided it the entire time, and then I went on the road with Apocalyptica, and I came back from Canada and I had it, but I actually got it really bad. Like it was pretty rough. I'd heard like things like, like it wasn't that bad. It's like a mild. Nah, man. Like I was. There was one point where I felt like I was like suffocating, and I freaked out a little bit. And the next day, I did every experimental drug there possibly was. I had the monoclonal infusion. I had some experimental like antimicrobial whatever. So I'll probably be glowing in the next 10 years, but it helped because the day I was fine, but there was a minute it was touch or go for me. At least it felt that way.
Oh man, what a pain, and what a weird time to have to go through. But I'll tell you, one good thing to come out of COVID is these sort of conversations, because I used to do all the interviews in person at concerts and everything, and that's cool. But getting to do long form conversations with people all around the world, from the comfort of their home, from wherever, is something I've never been able to do. So I mean, I like that anyway. Zoom has been a nice addition.
I was just thinking that today, like before you and I at 9:00, I had a meeting. I was asked to be on the board of directors of an organization here in Las Vegas called Hope Link, and they house displaced and previously homeless folks. And we were all very busy. We've been trying to pull it together, this meeting together, and it's like in person. And finally, someone just had like this idea where it's like, what are we live in the world of Zoom. Like, why are we making this so difficult? And so we were just, we got everything knocked out in 10 minutes, and people were in different parts of the city. And I was like, haven't we learned? We don't have to do that anymore. You know what I mean? Like I could be in the parking lot on my phone and we could have a meeting if we needed to,
Right, exactly. It's so easy. Well, I have a ton I want to talk to you about. I mean, your story is so interesting, and and there's so many. I mean, you have a ton of bands, so many people you've worked with. But I want to start kind of from the beginning. Tell me a little bit about what music was on in your house. What were your parents kind of an influence musically growing up?
Yeah, so I was very fortunate that two things. One, my mother is a poet and a singer of a style of music. I'm Cuban, of first generation American born, but she sang this style of music called Punto Guajiro, which would be the equivalent to in Cuba would be the equivalent to American blues. It's music about the homeland and struggle and working in the fields. So I grew up watching her perform at like family gatherings and just making grown men making them fall to tears. You know what I mean? So I learned early on the power of words and a melody and of delivery from her. And then also my father, he had this incredible vinyl collection of he's by far to this day probably one of the biggest fans of music I've ever known. We don't have the greatest relationship anywhere else other than our connection about music. It had everything in that from his from deep Cuban music and like flamenco and Latin jazz to things as far as Elvis and James Brown and Cat Stevens and Bob Dylan. So that's how I grew up. And we woke up, whether you liked it or not, every day you woke up to music. So so those two things really molded me as a fan of music and as a musician.
Yeah, and so at what point did you know this was like something for you, right? When did you pick up the guitar, and when did that kind of?
So I think my dad, like, you know, was vicariously living through me, and I started getting instruments from an early age. Like, so my first instruments were like Cuban percussion, timbales and bongo, and like whatever maracas, whatever, you know, percussion he could get his hands on, I would have it. But then there was like a particular moment that was really like transformative for me, which was, you know, you talk to older people and they talk about like about seeing the Beatles on Sullivan. Well, for me, that my Beatles on Sullivan moment was the Motown anniversary when Michael Jackson first did the moonwalk, right? Where he came out, he actually performed with his brother first, right? And then they went away and he came out and he performed by himself on that stage. And I'll never forget, I was a kid. I was, I was like, I had to have been, 8 to 10 years old, and sitting there on our couch, like watching this guy just control this audience, and and the power of his voice and his magnetism. So that was my moment, and I knew right then that I wanted to entertain,
Yeah.
people, so that was my moment.
So how old were you when that happened? Was that
like I said, I had to have been, if you look up the year that was at Motown, I had to have been between 8 and 10, maybe.
So it was from that point on, you were set. You're like, this is it.
Yeah, I was
going back.
Any chance I got. I was dancing for. I think that night, my dad was very, very, very macho, and I remember I was like, my mom has like this wig, and it was like, and I had like this curly wig, and I was like, I put that on, and I put it like on like a big leather jacket, and by that night I was imitating the guy, like performing for my family, and it was off and running from that day forward. Yeah. Any chance I got, I would entertain.
Yeah. Well, talking about, kind of going back decades, I know you're going to be able to play a song or two. I mean, one that I really like, California 1976. Can you tell me about that song?
Yeah. It's actually, and I've being that no one knows the album yet, I haven't had the opportunity to talk about it. So I put out my first album in 2001, or did it come out? Was Poor Man's Son for Atlantic. There's a song on that album called To Los Angeles. And it's this very optimistic song about me moving to Los Angeles, right, to make it big, and to the bright lights and the 405 freeway and getting the sunset, blah, blah, blah. And then it's very like optimistic song about this journey that a lot of musicians have when they move to Los Angeles. So now fast forward to this album, I thought about, the reality of that, right? The reality of moving there and knowing so many entertainers have been there, from dancers to actors to singers, of like having we all have this dream, and you get there and the reality sets in, And so basically it was a bookend to that first song. And it's a story about, a young woman that goes to Los Angeles, that makes this big deal about telling her friends, I'm going to make it big. And then it all sets in, and she gets forced to come back home for whatever reason. And she's still kind of playing it off. I didn't really like it there, but in her heart, it's like something is missing. It didn't go quite right. And that's what the song was. I just thought it was a really cool contrast of a song I wrote in my early 20s, now when I'm 46, and that's where it came from.
Yeah. Do you want to play that song now? What do you think?
You know what, man? I actually haven't even, I wish I would have known, because I haven't played it since I wrote it. But if you give me a second, I can figure it out.
Sure. We can work it. Yeah.
Okay, that's that part, right? So she stepped off a plane with a suitcase full of dreams, $100 and some change. to her knee. Her mama begged her not to leave. Friends whispered she won't last a week. But come hell or high sea, she'll prove them wrong. And she says, I don't miss California. It never really felt like home before anyone asked. She says she's glad to be back. I know I promised I would call, but I got busy chasing stars. She's broken and sad. She forces a laugh and says, no, I don't miss California. So
Yes.
yeah, so
Yes.
that makes sense, right?
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. I love it. Okay, so let's talk about the new album for a bit. I'm going to bounce around a lot, a lot here, but this new album comes out tomorrow. I know you're really excited about it. Tell me about the process of pulling it together. I mean, a lot of bands over the past couple of years have had to change things a bit. We talk about Zoom being a part of your process. Was that a part of making this happen for you, or what did that look like?
No doubt. So, you know, like everyone else, you know, my date that year was March 13th, right? The emails started coming in that shows were getting canceled, rehearsals were getting canceled. And it just from there, it was like one after the other for 2 weeks straight, just things were just starting to fall apart. So I don't know how to sit idle. Guys like me, like that's when I get in trouble. So I found I couldn't even leave, because if you remember, we were washing our groceries at the time, right?
Yeah.
So it was like Vanilla Sky out there, like that first scene of Vanilla Sky, like the streets were dead. So we didn't know if we could go out. We didn't know if it was in the air. It was that sort of thing. So basically I had to retreat, like we all did, into myself and just basically survive with my surroundings in a sense. So what I did was I just had this creative spurt, and I was like, you know what, I'm gonna sit down and I'm gonna grab a guitar. And I had a guitar that was tuned to open E, right? Open E tuning. First chord I hit on this guitar, this first riff, right? I felt like I had something instantly, and that song became The Great Divide, right?
Yeah.
And what I did was I pulled out. I didn't have a studio set up or anything. I pulled out my old MacBook Pro, right? Like this big old dinosaur, and a small interface, like whatever I could dig out of my closet, like a small interface, and then an SM7 microphone that I didn't even have it on stand. I literally sat it on the desk pointing at me, and I just recorded leaning in just like this. You know, the only light on was the screen, and I wrote that first song. I sent it. I got done with it. I sent it to some friends, and people were like, "Man, this is really good," you know. And then from then on, it was like every day, I just wrote. I wrote, and I wrote this little album literally within 2 weeks called Suddenly 44, that I didn't make for any other reason other than to just kind of send it to my friends, right? Just to send it to people. One of the people I sent it to was a friend of mine, a guy named Jason. That is actually, he's the vice president. Or I'm sorry, he's the president of Ducati North America, the motorcycle company. I sent it to him just right. He listens to it and he's like, "Dude, we got to do something with this." And I'm like, "Yeah, what?" You know, like, and we came up with this plan where I would get on a motorcycle. And basically, the best way to social distance is on a motorcycle. It's you by yourself. And kind of visit shuttered venues around the country, and broadcast a little show from out front. And so that's what I did. I started in Las Vegas, and I went up to Los Angeles, played the Viper Room in Los Angeles, made my way all the way up to San Francisco. Then I crossed the country all the way to Manhattan.
You played the Golden Gate Bridge, right?
I did. Yeah. I did. Yeah, I played everywhere. I played everywhere possible. And so when I got to DC, I played this venue that was actually, what they did was they were shuttered, right? But they let me open up. They let me go in and play in the basically on the ground on the stage with nobody around.
Sure.
Those guys happen to have financed some documentary films in the past, right? There's a long-winded answer, but it all makes sense, and it's very important to the story of this album. They're like, hey, this is a great story. We should make a documentary. And I'm like, I never in a million years when I was a kid thought I was gonna make a documentary. That's just not me. I just like to sing and that's it and do my thing. And long story short, now they financed the documentary, and within a couple weeks after that, I'm in Florida with a full camera crew, and we're shooting a documentary crossing the country back to Las Vegas, right? But this time we visit hair care facilities where I would play in the parking lot. I visited all my friends along the way, musicians like Blackberry Smoke and LP and Bill Burr,
Billy Gibbons,
and Randy Travis, and basically asked them how they were faring through the pandemic. But what happened during that trip that inspired the album was there's a lot of time when you're on a motorcycle by yourself, right? And there's a lot of open space in this country. So basically I was just inspired by my surroundings, and I started writing this album on the road. Like, I would, very unsafe, I don't recommend it to anybody, with voice notes, and by the time I got to Vegas, I had the sketches for the entire album, and it was inspired by that trip and like kind of what I was feeling and what I felt a lot of us were feeling. So at that point, I actually did it proper. I had my studio built in my bedroom, which is where I'm sitting now. I had just enough stuff to get it done, and I sat there and I made the Cross the Great Divide, and at my own pace, inspired by what I'd seen. I only pressed record if I felt inspired. I never forced anything. If I wasn't feeling it, I'd get up, I'd go take a walk, and I think that came across in the recording. It's a very hopeful and there's a lot of freedom in this album, and I think people are gonna be attracted to that. I think they're gonna be able to relate.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, it's a great album, and really, yeah. I mean, I'm interested also in your. I mean, like touring the country as a band in a van is completely different than on a motorcycle, right? Like, so what was? I mean, lots of time to your own thoughts. What was that like for you to kind of put yourself in that place and it was 12 days, I think I read.
No, man, that was the first.
It was more. It was more.
The first one we did in about less than 2 weeks. The second one was almost a month, and it was pretty much 6 to 8 hours of writing a day, 4 shows a day, and an interview of somebody. So it was pretty grueling. To this day, like, I just got back on a motorcycle like the other day because it destroyed my hip. Like, it was rough. But to be honest, it was one of the most moving experiences in my life, for many reasons. And the media has been extremely polarizing, right? Like we've never been more divided than we are right now. And at that time, when we shot that documentary, it was the George Floyd riots. It was the election was right at the end of that. It was a pretty burly time at that point, right? So in my mind, when we set out, like the people who loved me were like, man, like they thought I was going off to war, because we were going right through it. And the pandemic was like at an all-time high. It was the height of the pandemic at this point. But what I found is humanity prevailed, for lack of a better term, right? Like, what I found was, at the end of the day, even though we might have differences of opinion, different political views, different opinions on the pandemic itself, what I found was we all are very much the same, right? We all want to be heard. We all want to be understood. We all want to be loved, right? So I try to do a little bit of that in every city, right? Just listen, share, and show compassion. and the response that I got back was incredible, man. It's you take away all that noise, and humanity is very strong, and that's what I found, and that made its way into this album.
That's great. I mean, it's great to be able to really just connect and to not have to, you know, in a time where everything was shut down. You know, we talk about Zoom again, but I was talking to so many bands through that and everything, and they're just like not able to tour. You know, but some had, you know, some creative approaches of backyard shows for, you know, in a barn or something along those lines. You know, ways to get creative about it, like because we more than any time need music, you know, during that period, right? Like,
no doubt,
it helped us get through.
Yeah, I'm a firm believer. I really am. It's like, you know, and maybe it's you know, it's far reaching, and you know, and I'm an eternal optimist. But when I'm on stage, right, at a festival, and I have this vantage point and this view that a lot of people don't have the opportunity to see, right? And what I see on a nightly basis is people of every religion, of every race in front of me, and they're all singing the same song, right? It's like,
right.
I know it might even sound corny. I really believe that music could be the answer. It's like, if it's a big responsibility to have for people, but if some way we can harness that, and like find some unifying message, I really think, hey, look, we go to war to music, we go to sleep to it, we make love to it, we die to it. You know what I mean? It's like, that's the conduit to all of us. My prayer and music.
For sure. Let me ask you about a lyric and that you have in the song Samurai. Judge Judy on a yoga mat.
Yeah.
Can you tell me about that?
It's just that's a good one. And actually, that's actually one of my favorite songs on the album. And it's you know, it's you're in a relationship, or and you have this connection, and you see someone in a certain way, and it's yours. You know what I mean? And it's like, for in that particular, you know, lyric, it's this person that's completely zenned out, you know what I mean? Like, you know, and doing some yoga pose, but at the same time is just like in the throes of a relationship and just giving you the business.
Yeah. It's brilliant. I love it. Yeah. So you've been clean and sober. I don't know, segue. You've been clean and sober for 9 years. Tell me about how your music has changed from before to now, to where we're at now. How has that impacted your music?
I've been sober 9 years. You know, I used to have this, and a lot of people have this misconception, right? That you have to go to be, you know, in this dark place or be inebriated to experiment. Like, you know, you'll never find these distant melodies or ideas unless you're like, you know, in that world. And I really believed that. I thought I had to live the life to like be able to create, right? You know, when people say they don't have regrets, yes, that's bullshit. I have regrets, right? I wouldn't change any part of my life because it did make me the person I am now. And but as far as my writing then and now, I feel like a Jedi right now. You know what I mean? Like, I am completely focused. Like, this record was, even though it came from like this ethereal place, I had this laser precision, you know what I mean, that I couldn't have had if I was still using. You know, to be honest, if I was still using, you're a great guy, I probably wouldn't be here, because I just wouldn't be here. You know, even if we were having this interview, I would be glassed over and you'd be talking to a different person. You know what I mean? If I showed up, you know. So now I show up, I show up, I'm present, and that's reflected in my music as well. So I couldn't have made this record back then. First of all, the biggest reason is this record is a record of hope for me. Like even in some of the songs, like a song like "What Gives You the Right," that's a little bit darker and a little more sullen. I made a point to find a way to like show some kind of light, to like guide people out of that little darkness. So I couldn't have made that. I would have like lived in the agony, back then. And that's just not where I want to be anymore.
Yeah. Well, that's great, and congratulations,
Thanks.
by the way. I mean,
Thanks.
it's a great accomplishment for sure. Yeah. Talk to me about kind of your experience with Slash. Like, I mean, he seems like such just mysterious figure, that a man of few words on the outside anyway, from someone on the outside looking in. Tell me about working with him.
It's been years since we worked together, but I do consider him a friend. And what I can say about Slash, someone asked about this recently. It's funny, you have this persona of what you think he is, right? And he is. If there was a diagram for the perfect rock star, he's that guy, right? Like from a distance, he's aloof. He's got the chops. It's godly chops. It's like, incredible songwriter. But at his core, I've never met someone as dedicated to their instrument as that guy. Like, like I said, it's been years since we worked together, but I never remember a time hanging out with that guy that there wasn't a guitar in his hand. You know what I mean?
Wow.
I'm talking like always backstage, he's just always trying to better himself. And it's like, think about that guy's like the Scott, he's always making music. I love and respect so much, and he's a purist in that sense. Like I think you could take away all of these things, right? You could take away the stadium tours, and that guy would still have a guitar in his hand. And so, if anybody takes anything away from that, my opinion and perception of Slash is that he's the real deal. He's a real deal.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. You talk about Apocalyptica, and I want to kind of share your story of how you joined the band, really, because it's interesting, right? Like you met them via Skype, and then but the first time you met them in person was at your first gig together, and then the next day opened for Metallica. Like, tell me how this came about.
So what's even, the whole thing is like, you couldn't script it any better. And when people talk about those Hollywood stories, this is one of them. So I've been around long enough to have heard every promise, every like, I've taken them hook, line, and sinker in the past. Like, I'm going to make you a star. Oh, you're going to be in this band. Oh, we're going to be. I've heard it all, right? Because also being 46, I still remember that era in the record business where there were those guys like, hey, I'm going to give you a deal, and they're going to be, what I mean, like, and these massive record deals that they would turn poor kids that had into zero tax bracket into a 50% tax bracket overnight, right? So even though I am an eternal optimist, I do have a side of me that's a little bit jaded when it comes to the music business, right? A friend of mine, a guy named John Seidel, he was the great guy. We just actually talked this recently. The anti-music executive. That's the best way I could, that guy was he's a solid guy. He hits me up out of nowhere and goes, dude, this thing came across my desk. Like, there's a band from Finland. They're doing like this, like they're only sending this email to key people in the business. They're looking for a singer. And he's like, it's a band called Apocalyptica. And I remembered the band because they had shared a stage with Scars on Broadway with me and the guys when I was in that band with the guys from System. So I remember seeing them standing on the side of the stage and watching them do the Metallica things. I knew who they were. And I was like, and he's like, yeah, they're looking for a singer. I was like, a singer? I was like, I don't even think those guys have a singer. He's like, yeah. He's like, they want to hire a singer for this for some new record, and they want to make him a part of the band. And he's like, do you want to try out? And I was like, yeah, whatever, not because I didn't want to be a part of the band, just but because in my mind, it's like, it's going to be a massive cattle call, right? So he's like, okay, let me see. So basically he sends me an email. He sends me a link that was in the original email he got. And it's a song. It's an MP3 for song, two. It's one with like a demo vocal, right? And then instrumental. And it's a song called Hole in My Soul, right? It's ballad. It's a ballad. And they want you to sing it and then submit. So I got whatever. So again, I picked that computer that I just showed you. That's been a lucky computer.
Yeah.
That's what I think is right. I take that computer, this time no interface, no nothing. I just set it on my kitchen counter, right? In GarageBand. I didn't even open Pro Tools or Logic. Just right in GarageBand. And
Keep it simple, yeah.
And I just flew the song in and I pressed record. I listened, obviously, got the song, and I hand wrote the lyrics, and then I just pressed record and I sang into the top of the computer, into the internal microphone, sang it and sent it, and like throw and go and forgot about it, right? Thinking that I would never hear back. Weeks later, I get this email from a guy named Ulysses who ends up being their manager. This very German guy, and the email says it's like a sweepstakes. It was the funniest thing. Like, it says, Frankie Perez, you've been selected to be the singer of Apocalyptica. And I was like, what is this? Like
yeah, like a spam, right? Like
yeah, like you've been, and the band would like to have a Skype meeting with you tomorrow. And I called Seidel. I go, dude, I think I got this gig. He's like, what are you talking about? He's like, if you talk, I go, I haven't talked to him. I got like an award email. I got, and he's like, well, follow through, man, see what it is. And so the next day I call them on, I do the Skype call, and when this, remember the Skype sound? The Skype sound rings.
Right.
Yeah. This little blurry image comes up, and also boom, and there's 4 Finnish guys, shirtless from here up, like just standing there. They're like, hello, Frankie. and we've been the closest friends. And I was like, do I take off my shirt too? I don't know.
Yeah. Didn't get the memo in the email that this was a shirtless meeting, but yeah.
Yeah, and we've been friends ever since. Literally a couple weeks later, I was in Canada with them, and we rehearsed in the dressing room. They're basically like, learn these songs, and we'll see you there. So we met in the dressing room. We went through the songs. I went on stage and we did a show, and the very next day, literally the very next day, we were at a metal festival in Canada, and it was Metallica. That was my second show, and we've been friends, and we made a great record together. I just finished a tour with them a couple months ago, going back out with them in the fall, and that was a very, very, very cool experience, and a story that I'll take with me for the rest of my life.
One of those, what is this life, kind of stories, right? Like, how does this even happen or come about? Like, they didn't even meet you before selecting you. That's awesome.
Yeah, and I mean, if you think about it, it's funny. To this day, it's like this dark Cuban guy from Las Vegas with 4 like Finnish guys, like these completely different backgrounds. But when we get together, it's friggin', for lack of a better term, it's magic. Like we just did this work, and I've never been prouder. Like on a stage, like those guys are firing all cylinders. I'm firing also. We've all, years later, it's like everyone's coming into their own. I feel like I've found myself now musically and artistically, and it's like, like I can't wait to get back on the road. Let's put it that way. I love those guys.
Yeah, that's awesome. Can we talk about Sons of Anarchy?
Yes.
Your songs that you did for that are I mean, first of all, they're not the same, right? I mean, they're different in different styles and have this mystique and darkness to them too. The Bohemian Rhapsody cover is fucking incredible. Like that's a song that takes balls to cover, but you were able to elevate that song, you know, into something that it wasn't, and that I hadn't heard before. Yeah, I mean, just talk to me about how the whole experience came about.
You know, like, first of all, I can only take credit for my delivery. Conceptually, that was all Kurt Sutter and Bob Thiel. Like Bob Thiel, who's the composer and the mastermind behind the music, right? But Kurt Sutter, the creator and director of the show, like he is as much involved in music as he was in the show. And so I would come into the studio and they'd be like, okay, we're gonna do the Times Are Changing. I'd be like, oh, killer, I love Bob Dylan in Spanish with the mariachi.
In Spanish, yes.
You know what I mean? Like, I'd be like, all right, let's go. So, you know, I gotta be honest with you, man. Like, the fact that I have never shied away from genres, I gravitate towards good music. That's always been my thing. Like, as long as I'm not compromising my artistic integrity, I'll try anything, right? I'm into everything from Zydeco to salsa to blues to Norwegian folk music. Like, if it moves me, I'm in, right? So, and I also have never been afraid to try things and try different styles, right? And that, I feel like that outlook had really helped me when I got the opportunity to work with Kurt and Bob, because they could throw any genre at me and I would just jump right in. The way it came about was Dave Kushner, the guitar player in Velvet Revolver, who has become one of my greatest friends. We were working together initially on a reincarnation of the Velvet Revolver project. He wrote the theme song to Sons of Anarchy, right? And Bob Thiel, the composer, and they are really great friends. And Bob was like, "Hey, I need someone to sing Slip Kid, The Who, with this band Anvil." Remember that band Anvil? They had that documentary.
Yeah.
Right. And Kushner was like, "Hey, I got a guy. He's a great rock singer. I was like, you should bring him in. He works fast and, you know, really easy to work with." And I show up. Bob plays the track. I knock it out in minutes, right? Knock it out in minutes. He and I hit it off. He saw my range, right? And then that one song just turned into the next and the next and the next and the next. And, you know, 6 seasons later, there's 7 seasons. I have music on 6 of them, including original music. Like, I was just a part of the thread of that show. And it was a great experience, man. Like, the songs that he chose and the way, I'm a fan of the show too. You know, like, I've done music for movies before, and I watch a movie, I'm like, you know, like, I actually could not wait for a new episode of Sons of Anarchy. You know what I mean? Like, even if my song would be at the beginning of the show, I'd be like, yeah, and I'd be like, okay, get out of the way, let's watch the show. You know what I mean? Like, so it was that kind of experience, and I'm very, very grateful to both Kurt and Bob for that opportunity, and to Dave Kushner for having the foresight to introduce me to them. And it's been a really big part of my career, you know.
Yeah, and so you talk about your range and, you know, and the differences in genres and everything. Like, how do you find your voice? Because I mean, to be able to dip into so many things, like, it takes a kind of a curiosity. It takes a discomfort. I mean, you kind of delving into the unknown, right? And being okay with that. And so, where did that come from for you?
Like, again, I think it goes back to my upbringing and that record collection. Like, you know, I remember being a kid, and it would be like, it could be like some Celia Cruz, right? Like some deep, like the Sonora Matancera, which is like this big band salsa mambo sound from Cuba. You know, through one song, and the next thing you know, it's like, have I got a brand new bag? Like within the same 10 minutes, you know? So,
Yeah.
and I remember just appreciating that. So I've never been afraid to try a genre. It's like, because I was exposed to so much early on musically. I learned a long time ago that my voice is my voice. You know, I can manipulate it in ways to like fit into certain things, but I can't like, mimic somebody. And I think that's almost offensive to do in a sense. But so what I would try to do even those shows is just give an honest performance, really dive into what the song meant, right? Or means, what it means for the scene, right? What it means for the scene. And then I would go in head first. And if I've always believed that, even on my own record, my own music, if you're honest in your delivery, people will take the ride with you. They may not stick around, it may not be their bag, but initially they'll take the ride with you, So that's how I approached that project, like that.
Yeah, that's so awesome. So a couple of songs, a couple of questions as we kind of wind down, and then if you're cool playing one more song at the end.
Would love to.
That'd be awesome. What is a memorable experience that you had on the road? Something that kind of stuck out as like, this thing that is going to stick with you for a long time.
In general, my career, or
yeah.
Oh yeah, I got it.
Oh, just in general, yeah.
I got one that sticks out like immediately. Actually, I'm gonna give you two. The first one is more grandiose in rock and roll, and the second one just happened. So, and it goes back to Slash. So, years and years ago, Slash was headlining the Court Festival in Norway, right? And at the time, his project was called Slash and Friends, right? And he put together this band. It was Chris Chaney from Jane's Addiction on bass. It was Jason Bonham on drums, John Five on second lead rhythm, and then I was like, then he hired me to be the utility singer. So I had to be able to cover all genres and all these different people's. I had to do Zeppelin. I had to do some Rob Zombie. I had to do Guns N' Roses. I had to do some Jane's Addiction. So right, so he hired me to be that guy, right?
Yeah.
And the guest. Then he had other guests. So it's Slash and Friends, right? So then the other guests were Fergie, Ozzy was the headliner, right? And then Ronnie Wood came out to do a few songs, right, on guitar. We sound check at this festival on the main stage. We're sound checking, and Ronnie comes in, and I'm just like, this is insane. Like this is my life. I was a lot younger then. And I remember like I had this whole mantra, just act as if, no matter what, like you belong here.
Yeah.
Obviously, Flash knows what he's doing. He brought you here, so you own this. You be this to you. We started doing Knocking on Heaven's Door, and it was like this mixture between like the Guns N' Roses version and Dylan's version. It's a little jangly.
Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah. And Ronnie Wood is on that, right? And I'm singing. And I'm going for it, man. Like, this is just sound check. And I'm like, I'm laying it all out there, right? Like, I'm laying it all out there. And he like looks at me like we're done. He goes, I'm not even trying to do an English accent, but he's like, mate, that was fantastic. He's like, that's fantastic. So I thought that was enough. Like, to me, I was like, holy shit, this guy, like, from I got just knighted by Ronnie Wood,
You could die happy. Yeah.
Yeah. I was like, that was good enough. So, but later on we do the show, and it's sold out, man. It's like, it's beautiful in Norway at the time. Like, it was a sea of people, and we own this show. Like, and this is this moment, like, where there was like this really emotional moment in the set where we go do Knock on Heaven's Door. Song starts, and I just plant myself, and I grab my mic, right? And I'm in it, and I'm singing, and I feel the warmth of this spotlight, right? That's on me from the distance, and I can really feel it. My eyes are closed, I'm singing, and I feel like, let's say this is me, I feel someone, this is my shoulder, I feel this on my shoulder, like a body on my shoulder. And I'm like, I've been working with Slash for a long time, right? And I'm like, I couldn't tell. And I'm like, that'd be cool if it was Slash, you know what I mean? But, you know, because I love Slash and that would be awesome. But in my mind, I was like, I really hope that's Ronnie Wood. Really hope that. Sure shit, I get this whisper in my ear during that song. And it's the greatest quote. And I've actually used it with other people. He leans in and he goes, "You see that, mate?" He's referring to the spotlight. He goes, "You see that, mate?" He goes, "That's God winking at you. That's God winking at you." That's what he said. Song, mid-song.
Wow.
Yeah. And I'll never forget that.
Yeah.
That spotlight. You see what that is? If you have the opportunity, like to be in a place like this at a time like this, what I took from it. And you have this opportunity, hold it, because that's God winking at you. He just gave you the opportunity. I'll never forget. And then I just went for it. Like I went full Cocker, like full Joe Cocker, like yeah. So that was that moment, and I'll never forget it. One of the greatest moments of my career to this day. Now the other one is a lot different, but just as special, and it's really
sure.
I just played the Black Deer Festival in Kent in the UK literally a week ago. There's a song on my album called 2020 Vision, which this is the one I'll play. Mm-hmm. That when I wrote it, that when I was writing it in my mind, like I was just dreaming, hearing a crowd singing this chorus back to me, right? And that's the way I wrote it. I wrote it with that in mind. Like, this is theirs. This is something we're going to do together, right? No one has the album. And on top of that, I played this festival, and majority of people didn't even know who I was, right? But we had a killer set, and me and the audience were one at this point. Like, we just owned the night. And I go into 2020, and by the end of the song, they are singing that chorus to that song back to me. And it was just this moment, like, where everything felt right. You know, I was like, no matter what happens with this album, like, you know, my idea of success is very different now than it was when I was a kid. You know what I mean? I just want to leave a good legacy. I want to leave a good body of work that I'm proud of, you know, and I hope that it moves somebody. I hope that it does something for somebody. And that night it did it for a tent full of people, and it all came together. Everything I dreamt and wanted for that song happened in that one night. So that's the other moment that I'll never forget. Yeah. That
is awesome. And I'm sure, you know, it'll be great to play that live as you get on, you know, you're able to tour it and everything. Like,
no doubt.
Try and recreate that as close as possible to that evening, right?
That's absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, before you play that song, you've toured, you've been everywhere. Like the Bay Area. What's your favorite place to play in the Bay Area?
We played actually, and it was great. Like, we played in the park with the Sons of Anarchy band.
Okay.
Yeah, there's actually Golden Gate Park.
Golden Gate Park.
Yeah, and it felt like I was in. It felt like the 60s I felt like we took like a friggin' time travel. Like, it was insane. People were just dancing, and like, of all the places I've played in San Francisco, that was probably my favorite. You know, the Fillmore, obviously. Yeah, I mean, it is.
Yeah.
Like, I played there with years ago, with George Thorogood. We opened up for him.
Oh my God.
Yeah. And that was pretty cool, like, to look up and see him in that opera box.
The balcony. Yeah, exactly.
He was just sitting there watching us play, you know, in his tassels and his thing. It's like, so that was cool too. But that particular gig that I did with the Forest Rangers, which was Bob Field and Katey Sagal and the Sons of Anarchy band, basically everybody that contributed to the show. We played there for a big festival, and it was awesome. It was as close as I could get to, like, the Haight-Ashbury days. You know what I mean? Like, it was pretty.
Oh, there's so much history in that room. I mean, it's an incredible place. I get chills every time I go there. You could get lost for the posters on the wall. The apples have magic in them. I don't know what it is, but they have that apple bucket. You know, the poster you get at the end of the show for the sold out show. I mean, there's so much in the history there, and it's incredible. How cool is Katey?
She's amazing.
Yeah,
she's actually that's the best description of her is cool. Like yeah. I'm talking like cool, but I just like cool. Like, you know, she's one of those people. Everything you would think she is, it's what she is, and she can sing her ass off. She was a singer first. She's a singer first, and started to sing for the insurance, or started to act for the insurance. Yeah. You know, so yeah, she's great, and she was amazing in that show.
Oh, that's really cool. Well, I'll let you play the song. 2020 Vision. Yeah.
I'll do a little short version of it. If not,
sure.
30 minutes.
Yeah.
Got a running start, took a leap of faith. Bathing in the light of a smiling face. There's so much life for such a quiet place. This is sacred ground, hallowed be thy name. Out on the fray, lost in the blind, even the faithless pray for time. Out of the dark and into the wild. Surprised by the love that you find. Oh, be in your eyes. There's another soul that's born alone. No matter what they say, open your eyes. Open your eyes.
Beautiful.
Thank you.
I love it, Frankie. I want to thank you for being so generous with your time and for your music. I mean, I could talk to you for hours, but you've done so much. You've made such a mark, and you have such a great story. And where can we see the documentary?
The documentary is in its final stages. It should be out here pretty soon. But the album comes out actually tomorrow. It's basically the album is a companion to the documentary, but we're doing it backwards, record first.
It works, you know. You got to get the music out too, and the music is great. So congratulations on the new album. Good luck with it rolling out, crossing the great divide, as you did, and good luck with the Apocalyptica. Oh my God, I'm stumbling over the word. Apocalyptica.
Don't sweat it.
Sure. Yeah, good luck with the tour.
Yeah.
So, Frankie, you have a great rest of your day, and we'll see you out on the road. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you both. Thank you very much, man. Take it easy.
That was the interview with Frankie Perez here on Concert Pipeline, and we're going to wind it out with just a couple of music news stories here. about David Lee Roth. We had talked a handful of weeks back, probably at this point, about a Van Halen tribute tour. Well, he's reportedly the reason for the delay of the Eddie Van Halen All-Star Tribute Tour, which Sirius XM host shared during his broadcast on Friday. I have a very, very reliable source tell me last night the Black Crowes show that they hold up on the Van Halen Anything Happens is a lot falling on David Lee Roth. And let me see, it goes on to say, David Lee Roth, to no surprise, it shouldn't be a surprise to anybody. He's a difficult guy to wrangle, a difficult guy to get an answer on, a difficult guy to get focused on anything, a difficult guy to get to sign off on anything. He's all over the map, as you would expect, and have seen throughout history. And that the big holdup in anything happening with Van Halen is not Alex, who wants to do it and is trying. It's actually Roth, who needs to sign off and be involved. And contrary to any reports of anything different, Alex, Michael, Anthony are totally cool, and there's no issue there at all. And the stumbling block is trying to get Alex and Dave on the same page, and Dave wanting to do this and how they're going to do it, and that's really one of the big stumbling issues. So we'll see if that comes to fruition. It would be really cool to see that tribute pulled together. There are a lot of tours that are having shows canceled for a number of different reasons, too many to announce. But if you have tickets to a show, I recommend check the band's website and socials and all of that to see if it's actually going to happen, because a lot of stuff is getting canceled. I was going to start, announcing some cancellations, but it's just like it's too many to cancel to announce. Let's talk about Cardo Santana. He is doing very well following an onstage collapse. The musician's wife, Cindy, has shared an update on social media and said that he was doing very well. The musician was performing in Clarkson, Michigan on July 5th when he passed out mid-song due to heat exhaustion and dehydration. According to those in attendance, Santana was immediately attended to by medical personnel who treated him on stage. He appeared to regain consciousness very quickly, and was subsequently transported from the venue to the emergency department per a statement that was issued by his management. So Cindy Blackman Santana said, "Hi everyone, Carlos and I thank you so much for your prayers, love and care and concern for him. Please know that he's resting and doing very well. He was diagnosed with heat exhaustion and dehydration. It was 100 degrees on stage and 114 under the lights. So that, coupled with not enough water, is what caused the issue." She concluded, "He'll be as good as new soon. Thank you again. We love you, Cindy and Carlos." Nothing crazy to worry about there, according to them. And we'll close out with a story about Bob Dylan. His iconic original re-recording of Blowin' in the Wind sold for £1.48 million. It's a one-of-a-kind recording, and it's now home to a lucky fan. And it's him singing his 1963 classic Blowin' in the Wind. It's on an iconic original format disc. First time in 60 years that he has re-recorded this song that was written in 1962 and released it as part of the 1963 album, The Freewheelin' Bob Dylan. And let's see here. Hold on. So T-Bone Burnett announced in April the iconic original format used for the re-recorded Dylan track is lacquer painted on an aluminum disc with a spiral etched into it by music. This painting, however, has the additional quality of containing that music, which can be heard by putting a stylus into the spiral and spinning it. It's a new high fidelity format, and as the pinnacle recorded sound, it's the archival quality. It is future proof. It is one of one. That really unique item went for a lot of money. Bob Dylan just toured, and his dates concluded on June 11th at Oakland's Fox Theater, his third of 3 nights at the venue. And at that show, he covered the Grateful Dead's Friends of the Devil. Really cool. All right, go Bob Dylan. That is our show for today. Let me give you a little preview of what we have coming up besides what I've already told you earlier in the show. next week on the program, we have Heavy Gus. We also have Aeon Station coming up, Uncle Bard and the Dirty Bastards. And of course, as I mentioned, Everclear is going to be on the program. So that's what's coming up on Concert Pipeline. Thank you for tuning in. And for all of us here at Concert Pipeline, I'm Steve Jones. We'll catch you next time.